This week, at the moment this video was published, New Zealand's national football team, the All Whites, qualified for the FIFA World Cup for the first time in 16 years, and just the third time in history. It's been a long road of trepidation and triumph to get to this point, which all started a long, long time ago, in a galaxy not very far away. Several thousand years ago, a couple of bored young Chinese lads came across a round thing that resembled a ball. They looked at each other and said to themselves, what if we kicked it with our foot? And so the game of soccer was born. Various variations of the sport were played, from the earliest versions of the game to keepy-uppies to whatever this is, before a form of the game we know and love gradually started to emerge in the 1800s. Many different groups of people, called clubs, formed teams, and eventually the first official international football match between England and North England was played. Like everything that has any connection to Britain, the game eventually manifested its way here. A little bit too late to capture the national public mood in the same way the handsy version of the game did, but enough for New Zealand to play its first full official international match in Dunedin, winning 3-1 against Australia, proving for all eternity that New Zealand was the better country at football.
Awful.
The following year, a domestic cup competition was launched. Named after the boat which donated the trophy, the Kiwi version of the FA Cup was born, first contested by the stalwarts of New Zealand football, including the Masterton YMCA, the Auckland Harbour Board, South Auckland champions Huntly, and my personal favourite, the Daubers Motor Depot from Foxton, who, to be fair to them, actually won the Manawa 2 division that year. The overall competition was won by Seacliff, who may have been just a little bit crazy. Apart from the Chatham Cup, the occasional international match, and the odd kick about town, New Zealand's football scene was pretty quiet. A couple of big teams came down under, most notably Manchester United in 1967. And it was around this time that things started to liven up. FIFA's newest confederation, the OFC, was set up. And by 1970, New Zealand had a crack at qualifying for the World Cup for the first time and established a new national domestic league. However, New Zealand's first golden moment in football came in 1982 when they qualified in a combined Asia-Oceania tournament, defeating China 2-1 in Singapore. Their road to Spain was especially impressive given they'd lost the Continental Cup against Fiji a year earlier, only to record their largest win ever against them late in qualifying. They also recorded the longest run in World Cup qualifying without conceding a goal in history. The All Whites' first game at Espana 82 was against North England, where they scored 2 goals and lost. They had high expectations for their remaining 2 games, but lost to footballing minnows the Soviet Union and Brazil. The 90s saw a massive expansion of club football into New Zealand. Our first professional club, the Football Kings, began playing in Australia's senior men's competition. The All Whites also became more regularly competitive in international football. In the 1990 World Cup qualifiers, for example, New Zealand defeated Australia 2-0 in one of 2 group games against them in Auckland, proving for all eternity that New Zealand was the better country at football.
Awful.
We even scored in the away leg. But both countries were bested in that year's competition by the true powerhouse of Pacific football. Can you guess which Pacific country that might be? That's right, Israel, a completely uncontroversial country that everyone loves, who spent a couple of cycles playing in Oceania because the countries in Asia love them a little bit too much. They lost in the ultimate playoff to the Medellin cartel. Colombia. New Zealand even beat Poland at the World Cup in 1999 at the under-17 level, at home. But hey, it was a snapshot of the emerging footballing talent playing the best of the best on Kiwi shores, with future international stars taking to Kiwi pitches, such as Landon Donovan, Michael Essien and Sinthawachai Hawhairatanaku. In 2004, the Football Kings, who were okay in the NSL, were transformed into the New Zealand Knights to take part in the new Australian A-League, and were less okay? They dissolved after just 2 seasons, and the New Zealand A-League licence was retained just at the 11th hour to form a Wellington-based outfit called the Phoenix, who did really well, becoming the first Kiwi football team to reach the playoff of an Aussie competition in the 2009-10 season. Also in 2009, the second golden moment of New Zealand football took place. After finishing top in Oceania qualification for the World Cup, which Australia ran away from a couple of years earlier, proving for all eternity that New Zealand was the better country at football, Bahrain stood in the All Whites' way of a second stint at the World Cup in South Africa. After a dull draw in the first leg, all eyes turned on Wellington for the second leg. Striker Rory Fallon scored a thumping header on the cusp of half-time to give New Zealand the advantage. But shortly after the restart, Bahrain were awarded a penalty, which, if converted, would have seen Bahrain take advantage on the away goals rule.
Adnan lining up to take the penalty.
Now at this point, I should point out my first problem. Even though I've taken more creative liberties on showing you content than in my last video, I know for sure that showing any further actual game footage will result in a definite copyright strike. But, given the nature of this iconic moment, it's too iconic not to show you what happened. So, using a bit of good old Kiwi ingenuity, I decided to do something I've never done before. Show you some IRL content.
Adnan lining up to take the penalty.
Now at this point, I should point out my second problem. I have no friends. Granted, I could have called up some of my old mates from high school, or asked the group of people walking past if they wanted to give me a hand for a few minutes or so, but that would break the most important commandment of the Incel Code of Conduct. So, once again, using a bit of good old Kiwi ingenuity, this is what I came up with. Enjoy!
Adnan lining up to take the penalty. A lot of talk about penalty shootouts and pressure. This will effectively put Bahrain ahead in the tie. Adnan. Saeed Adnan. Great save, Mark Paston. What a save, Paston.
New Zealand qualified for South Africa, especially thanks to the heroics of Mark Paston, as one of the lowest ranked sides in the tournament, ahead of only the hosts themselves and North Korea, who had a young superstar rising through their ranks. Expectations were low, especially being drawn against defending world champions Italy, who had managed to knock out Australia in the previous World Cup in Germany in 2006, as well as Slovakia, who knocked out their Czech neighbours, the 6th highest ranked team in the world at the start of qualifying, and Paraguay, who finished 3rd in South American qualification above Argentina and 1 point behind leaders Brazil. Our first game against Slovakia in the World Cup was heading for a defeat until, in the 93rd minute, 21-year-old Winston Reid, who played his first international game for New Zealand just 3 weeks earlier, scored the most memorable goal in New Zealand footballing history. Wait, do I have to do this again? Ugh, fine. Here you go. Actually, you know what? Screw it. Here's the actual goal. After securing our first ever point in a senior World Cup game, men's or women's, New Zealand... Oh no, I forgot the women! They appeared for the first time in 16 years at the World Cup in 2007 and... Yeah, okay, never mind, back to the men. New Zealand then faced defending world champions Italy. And what followed... Oh, you know what, screw it. Here's both of them. A totally biased penalty decision, some amazing saves from Mark Paston again, and narrow misses from Ivan Visilic and some young kid I've never heard of called Chris, saw the game finish in a stunning 1-1 draw, bettering the result that Australia managed against Italy in the previous World Cup, proving for all eternity that New Zealand was the better country at football.
Awful.
Despite a stalemate against Paraguay in the last group game and elimination from the tournament, New Zealand left the World Cup as the only team not to lose a game. Did you hear that, world? You're all a bunch of losers! Brazil, losers. England, losers. Germany, losers. Netherlands, losers. Australia, you're definitely a bunch of losers over there, mate. America, losers. Lionel Messi, loser. Cristiano Ronaldo, loser. Andreas Iniesta, who scored the only goal in the World Cup final, loser. Tom Hanks, loser. Vladimir Putin, loser. Judi Dench, loser. Winston Churchill,
Henry Cooper, Lord Nelson, Lady Diana, Maggie Thatcher.
Actually, scratch that. You guys are alright, but maybe put on a couple of pounds though. Your folks look a little bit light on. Paul the Octopus, who correctly guessed the outcome of every match in the 2010 FIFA World Cup. Loser! Canada Goose, loser! African Elephant, loser! Mexican Staring Frog of Southern Sri Lanka, loser! Lur, ruler of the planet Omicron Persei 8, loser! Kendrick! More incredible moments and developments took place. The women's team, the Football Ferns, picked up points in their next 2 World Cup campaigns before New Zealand, in 2023, co-hosted the World Cup with Australia and secured their first ever World Cup win, a famous and emotional victory against Norway on the opening day of the tournament in Auckland, hours after a mass shooting in the CBD claimed 3 lives. New Zealand's youth teams also continued and continue to excel.
Fact overload.
After advancing to the round of 16 for the first time in the Under-20 men's tournament in 2015 on home soil, the junior All Whites would advance to the knockout stages for the next 4 Under-20 World Cups, beating Honduras twice and a Norway side in 2019 with a young Erling Haaland up front.
Fact overload.
Perhaps arguably the greatest achievement in football by a New Zealand national team, the Under-17 girls, creatively nicknamed the Young Football Ferns, finished third in the 2018 Under-17 World Cup, dispatching Finland, the host Uruguay, Japan on penalties in the quarter-final, and Canada in the third-place playoff.
Fact overload.
And now, once again, the All Whites are back on the biggest international stage. A squad of young hopefuls to take on the world's biggest and brightest stars. Football in New Zealand is strong and has a bright future. Long may it continue.